Hello and welcome to the Pokemon Zoology Podcast number 8, PZP. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. It's been a crazy month recently. Lots of things going on in my personal life. Stuff that obviously I'm not going to talk about on here, but yeah, ups and downs. But, that's how it is. But it has meant that I've, been limited on what I've been able to do in terms of creating new Pokemon last month anyway. I've actually knocked out a few more since then, but it's how it is. I just want to apologise for uploading this so late. As I said, there's been lots of things going on. Recently I did some new pictures and stuff which has delayed everything. So I do apologise for that. Please forgive me, but hopefully we will be able to move on from it together, and I'll get to talk to you about a few more things going on. So one of the first things that I want to talk about, and some of you may have noticed this, but I've actually had to start adding watermarks over all of my work, which, as you can imagine, is quite taxing, having to go through and replace all of the pictures that I've done. But it's something that I really, really didn't want to do, but it turns out it's something that I have to do. It's come to my attention that a couple of companies, especially in China and stuff, have been using my work and selling it online without my knowledge. I have, and this is like different companies, they're not even tied together, these are just like things, seems like it's all come at once, but it's different companies that have started using my work and are making a lot of money out of it, and I'm not saying a penny, so as you can imagine, not best pleased about that. But it kind of dawned on me that I think, even though, watermarks I feel like can ruin a piece of work. Obviously, I want you guys to see it in its best possible quality, but I have to protect myself. It's just the simple facts of it. So I've had to do that, which is annoying, but I hope you understand why I've done it. You can still see a lot of the picture. You can, it's not too restrictive, but it's just a way of me protecting my hard work. I'm all for people sharing my work and crediting me and all that kind of stuff. I think it's fantastic. I know there's a lot of people out there who get really funny about it, especially if they do it without permission, if you'd like to put it like that. Personally, I see it as free advertising. If someone is doing it, like say that they're posting one of my pictures on Instagram, and in the comments they clearly say, this is some wonderful work from Joshua Dunlop, here's a link to his page. I think that's fantastic, and I think that's great. So it's free advertising for me. They're getting followers and stuff from it, but I don't see anything wrong with that, really. My problem is when either people share my work and don't credit an artist, or share anyone's work and don't credit an artist, because you're basically taking somebody's hard work and profiting off it for nothing. You're not giving anything back, and it really doesn't take much to credit an artist. And I know I've had many people that, I didn't know it was yours and I couldn't think. And they're like, you can reverse Google image search something super easy these days. That's not an excuse. Like it's very easy to find. Even like, realistic Pokemon as a concept, or like in a lot of things that, a lot of artwork that's out there, you can just type it in and say, like, I don't know, realistic Pokemon or something like that, and there's a high chance that it will come up. So that is not an excuse. It's just either you being lazy or actually not wanting to credit an artist, not wanting any traffic to divert away from your page, which is selfish. But the point being is, coming all the way back to my original point, is that there are also people out there who will steal people's work and will use it to make money, and that is theft. So I've done this to try and protect myself just that little bit more. Obviously, if you buy any prints or anything like that, there's not going to be a watermark on it. It's just stuff that's out online. But I found recently as well that a lot of these websites like Facebook and ArtStation and DeviantArt and all these kinds of places that I post, also have no limitations on people being able to just download the full-sized image for their use. So if there were limitations on that, if you couldn't go in and right-hand click and save an image to your computer, then there wouldn't be a problem, and I don't really understand why that's not a feature. So yeah, I also want to give, I'm just going to say this, I don't often give shout-outs, but I will give a shout-out to these people who have recently done some wonderful videos on me on their YouTube channels. One is at ADrive he did a great review, like going through all my realistic Pokemon and just kind of talking through it, and I thought that was really nice to hear his thoughts. Another one is at Palette_U or Palette University. This guy is a biologist and a geologist, I believe, and he goes through and he reviews my work and talks about where I've pulled my research from and how I've integrated biology into Pokemon. And yeah, and I thought it was really, really interesting. So do go and check out his stuff. He's just starting out, so I think it would help him out to have a look. And also there's another guy who I did a short interview. I answered a few questions for him, called Umbreon Libre on YouTube. I don't know if the video itself is up yet, but I know it's coming out soon. So yeah, check those guys out. They've done me a real solid and reviewed my work. So yeah, thank you very much to all of you guys. So one of the reasons why my work has slowed down in the recent months is, and if you don't know, is because I'm working on a new game called Pangea Beyond Extinction. It's a first-person RPG fantasy game where primitive cultures live alongside dinosaurs. So it's kind of like your classic fantasy game, something like The Witcher 3 or something along those lines, but you can ride and tame dinosaurs and do battle on them and stuff like that. So it's a really exciting concept, something that I came up with a while ago, and then kind of a game company was born out of it. But yeah, I've been doing loads of stuff. We've got a social media now, which is at Pangea the Game. Pangea is spelled Pangea. Yeah, so we've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, loads of new cool stuff coming out, lots of the concept artwork that we're working on. We will be showing more stuff like the actual 3D development and whatnot soon. But you have to remember that we've been doing this for 4 months, which in terms of a scale of a game is very early. But we are making leaps and bounds in terms of development. So this month I only was able to do one picture, which was Tangela. Now this was an interesting one, that's for sure. Obviously there's a lot of weird, creepy Pokemon out there. Not necessarily creepy, but a lot of weird Pokemon out there. But there are one or two out there that are just quite tricky to kind of like nail down in terms of realistic aspect. And Tangela was one of them. Obviously because it is a walking ball of like tangled vines. But a lot of people said to me when they saw the picture, they were like, oh well, the vines look a little bit odd. And part of the reason is actually I kind of wanted them to. I wanted this to kind of look kind of alien and strange. A lot of people suggested that I pulled reference from roots and brambles and stuff like that. And in some ways I kind of did. But one of the things that I kind of wanted to look at more than anything was actually, because I was researching blue plants, which are quite rare. What I found was some really interesting looking succulent plants. Now, if you're not really familiar with succulent plants, they're quite a rubbery, translucent plant. You've probably seen them in like garden centres and stuff, and you can get them in like little pots and whatnot. I believe they're distantly related to cacti, but I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, they do have like quite a translucency kind of feel, and I really like that idea that there was this semi-translucent alien-y kind of feel to the vines, and kind of also explained to why they were quite smooth looking. So when I was developing it, obviously I didn't want it to look too CGI, but part of succulents is that they are very smooth, covered in these kind of tiny fibrous hairs, which in my head made kind of a lot of sense in the idea of these vines being able to slide over one another. If they were rubbery or like grippy like roots or something like that, it would probably struggle. So I wanted it to be able to have this kind of velvety feel that it could kind of like slide over the top. And the light passing through it kind of gives this really kind of subsurface scattering, and so the light bouncing around within the vines. And yeah, and I was really happy with it. I know a few people, when I posted the first one, there was a bit of the how can I put it? Do you remember there was that dress that was out a few years ago where some people saw it as gold and some people saw it as black or something along those lines, or blue? I think there was a little bit of that going on here, because like when I looked at it and I the way I painted it and everything like that, it was blue and it was very similar to the original, but obviously rendering it when there was the light hitting it in certain ways, and there was this kind of like subsurface kind of red glow to it. A lot of people were saying like, oh, it looks white to me, like this looks like a white thing, which I couldn't see personally. But I went in later and I kind of like tried to bump up the blue a little bit, but I did want it to kind of have like a pale blue rather than like a striking blue, because it already looks crazy. It's not something that you'd see in reality. So I didn't want to kind of heighten the colours too much, because then it would look really fake. But yeah, and I put a kind of like a texture map over the top of the tentacles in order to kind of give it more realism in it. With the feet, I know on the anime that they kind of wear boots. Obviously that's not really going to work in a realistic context, so I came up with the idea that they were just kind of flattened roots that gave it the ability to walk. And obviously there's quite a few grass type Pokemon out there that can walk, so it's just kind of along those lines. And the eyes were something that I really struggled with at first, because obviously firstly the inside of the vines is solid black in the anime, and a lot of people said to me like, oh, it's not dark enough, blah 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 blah. But there's a few issues with that when it comes to light, because one, if you have a well lit area, that light will still penetrate inside, and if you darken it any darker than what I did, so I had to give it like a kind of a solid inside, like a kind of a skin. If I made that pure black, that hints that there was literally nothing inside it, like it's completely hollow, and even then you'd probably still see something inside. And it's very well documented in the Pokemon lore that it kind of has like this onion like body inside, so it's not hollow. So the light can penetrate and it would hit some form of surface. And if I did make it any darker than that, then you just wouldn't see the eyes. Quite frankly, if you can't see the skin, you can't see the eyes. Or maybe even if you could see the eyes, then there'd be no reflection and it just wouldn't look as real. There's a lot going on with it. But one of the main things I wanted to do with the eyes, obviously in the anime it's got like these big white dot eyes. But I wanted to make them feel really alien and kind of unique, because these are plants after all, and plants don't have eyes, so I wanted to give it something different, something unique. So I kind of went for these kind of metallic eyes, and I was really happy with how it turned out and how it looked. I don't think there's anything that I would go back and change. I personally, I was just very happy with it, and I think also it's a very difficult Pokemon to portray, and I think everyone kind of has their own idea of what maybe it should look like. This is mine, so that's just how it is. But yeah, so that was the only Pokemon that I did this month, or last month, sorry. So now we're going to move on to some Q&A questions. Only 2 this week. I mean, you are always welcome to message me if you are part of my Patreon supporters. I usually pull the questions from there. But yeah, let's head on with this one. So this is from @Kaza10. How do you make such fine details on your models? I get this question asked quite a lot, actually. It is a combination of 2 things. So the first is that I use alphas in my models. When I'm sculpting in ZBrush, obviously once I've kind of created the initial block out of the model, and I'm happy with it, I'll go in and start adding the details. The first thing would be adding creases and folds and stuff like that, just so it kind of feels like you can see where the skin works. And then after that, I'll use alphas. There'll be a mixture. If an alpha is basically like a black and white image that can be portrayed in 3D height in the thing. So anything that's darker is lower, anything that is lighter is higher. So you can use these black and white images that would be like scales or something like that, and it'll be kind of these patterns. And a lot of these can be pulled from photographs. And you can basically drag them out and they create really detailed texture on your models. They have to be used carefully. If you kind of go willy-nilly, things stretch, things don't look right, blah, blah, blah. So you have to take your time to kind of make sure that everything is in the place it needs to be. But it's a really good way of getting high detail really, really quickly. Especially when it comes to like rendering out the model, like things like that will catch the light and it will just kind of give it that next level of realism. The second element of it is basically using photo textures and digital painting. If I find a place where I feel like the texture isn't really coming through, I'll paint in some texture, or I will find a photograph of like some scales from a tortoise or something like that, and I'll Photoshop that into the image, making sure that the color and the light and the texture and everything like that all blends perfectly. And this is a big reason why a lot of people don't understand when I say my models or the depictions of the Pokemon in my pictures are not fit for animation or for printing or anything like that, because I do a huge amount of editing in Photoshop. You know, you may see, once I originally bring it into Photoshop, I'll have, you know, the original model rendered and that'll look good and stuff, but then I'll start painting over the top of it, I'll start bringing in these textures, and then I'll also go in and use things like the liquify tool, which I know a lot of people out there, the artists out there, don't like, but if you're using it to make minor adjustments, I think it's fantastic. And as long as you use it right. But, you know, that might be moving the eye up a little bit. That might be making the mouth a little bit wider, making the teeth a little bit longer or something along those lines. So what I finish with is what I'm really happy with. And that's what I want the picture to look like. Because, you know, I am a concept artist. I'm not a 3D modeler. I use 3D as a tool. I wouldn't call myself a 3D sculptor. I have talked to a couple of people about maybe doing some 3D printing stuff later and basically going in and altering my models to make them look a little bit more like my pictures, finalizing the textures and all that kind of stuff. But that's something I'm probably going to look at a little bit later on. I think I've just got way too much on my plate at the moment, so I don't need to add 3D printing onto it. But yeah, it's something that I've definitely thought about. But yeah, hopefully, Kaza10, I hope that answers your question. Got another question here. Last question. It's from Daryl Jordan, and Daryl asks, if you could give any Pokemon an evolution that doesn't already have one, which would you choose? Cool, that's tricky. I mean, I always think that Pokemon like Shuckle and Dunsparce deserve an evolution. They're just kind of like little weird creatures, and I just think that yeah, they just kind of look like they need something else. If I was going to talk about like my favourite Pokemon, I'd probably say Lapras. I would really love to see a Lapras or like a regional variant or something like that of a Lapras. I've actually made one myself. If you follow my social media, you'll know that more recently I've been doing some fake Pokemon, which I never intended to get into, but I did some and everyone loved it and they just said keep doing it. So I've been making fake Pokemon and yeah, people have really been enjoying them. I did a regional variant of Lapras, mainly because I thought that, I feel like they missed a trick on a lot of the Galar Pokemon, to be honest. They're not my favourite. There's a few lovely gems in there, but the majority of them I was quite disappointed in. But I felt like, you know, if you're basing a region in the UK and you're missing out some of the key, you know, mythological creatures, like, where's the Loch Ness Monster? Come on. What's going on? So yeah, I created a Loch Ness Monster Lapras. Yeah, if you have any other ideas for fake Pokemon and you want to let me know, stick them in the comments down below. I'll be happy to hear your ideas. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening to my podcast. I just want to do a quick shout out to my Patreon supporters: Sturla, Nikki Wolf, Bridget D Laurent, Jamie Dunbar, and Elvis Ditto. So thank you guys for your support. Really, really, really appreciate it. And yeah, guys, if you want to help support the project, it would help me out immensely. So, check out the links below and have a look at my Patreon, or check out my Etsy store. Got loads of prints on there. I don't have any of the new ones yet, simply because money is very tight at the moment to build my stock. That just really comes down to the coronavirus. I know there's a lot of people who are struggling right now, myself included. It's just how it is. So, what can you do? But yeah, eventually once everything calms down, and I'm hoping next year I can book in a few more Comic-Cons and events and stuff like that. So hopefully when that comes around, I'll be able to get all of the new prints in, and yeah, I'll have loads of stuff for you to enjoy. So guys, thank you so much for listening. I really do appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying these as much as I am, and I'll talk to you next month. See you later.